Okay.
Hello, welcome, thank you to those of you who are here in Monterrey and around Uruguay. Can you hear me all right? I'm not sure if you're able to tell. Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and do a workshop on teaching English pronunciation skills. So this is a workshop I've done many times, and so we'll see how much this will help you all. Just a little bit of background so you know kind of where I'm coming from. I have 2 bachelor's degrees, one in Spanish and then one in linguistics, and I focused on phonetics and phonology. So that is kind of my specialty background. And then I did my Master of Arts in Teaching English as a Second Language from the University of Illinois. And there I taught graduate ESL pronunciation courses, and I also taught a lot of pronunciation tutorials in our Intensive English Institute. And then I was a visiting faculty member at the University of Barcelona in their English department. And now I am, after that I was an instructor at Washington University in St. Louis, and I got to teach Advanced Pronunciation 1 and Advanced Pronunciation 2. I got to develop the materials for that. And now I'm a faculty member at Webster University in St. Louis, where I got to develop, and every year I teach a course in teaching English pronunciation. So I went from teaching pronunciation to now teaching teachers how to teach pronunciation. And so my current role is Associate Professor and Coordinator of Teaching English as a Second Language. Last year I had a Fulbright here in Uruguay. I got to travel all around the country, working with Se va en Inglés, and had the opportunity to present kind of all over the place, including all over Uruguay. So thank you for coming, and thank you for tuning in. I've just got a list of some different presentations I've done on pronunciation specifically, and some publications. So it's kind of, this is coming together from many years of experience. So what I'm going to try to do is present some useful frameworks that will help with teaching English pronunciation, review some traditional approaches that exist for teaching pronunciation, and then present different options that you can use when trying to teach various features of pronunciation, and then answer questions. So those of you who are right here, feel free to jump in and ask questions. It won't throw me off at all. I've been doing this for a long time, so just go for it. I don't know if there's a way for people to type in, but you can write down your questions and email them to me afterwards. Also, if you'd like copies of these slides, please feel free to email me. I'll give my email address at the end, and I can send you a copy of that. So I know sometimes people say, wait, go back, I want to write that down. I'm going to try to cover a lot, so just go ahead, write me, and I'll send you the slides so that you can go back and look at them. So the first thing that we need to talk about when we talk about teaching pronunciation is what variety of English are we teaching? And I know here at the Alianza that is a big issue in terms of, do you teach the British English, which is sort of the traditional, where they teach it a lot, or do you teach American English because of the association with the United States here? But with this, I want to talk about the concept of inner circle, outer circle, and expanding circle. So it's this new model, it's actually not that new, it's a few decades old, that we use to talk about the type of English that's being used. And so I'll review that, and then we need to talk about the features of English that we're going to be teaching. And usually we break this down into 2 larger groups, which are segmentals and then suprasegmentals. So the segmentals will be the consonants and vowels. This is usually what we are taught. And then there are the suprasegmentals, which is stress, rhythm, melody, phrase stress, and intonation, which does not always get taught. And I'm going to try to cover both of these, so we'll see how much time we've got. So if we go back to this inner circle, outer circle, and expanding circle, this term is from Raj Kachru with World Englishes, and he's very specific on this plural of World Englishes, that there's not one English, but that there are many Englishes in the world. And Kachru divided English into 3 concentric circles. This is probably what he's most famous for, with the inner circle being the United States, the UK, Australia, Canada, and then you have this outer circle, which are the former British colonies. So you get like India, Singapore, and then you get the expanding circle, which is pretty much the rest of the world that is learning English. And so Uruguay fits into this expanding circle. So you might ask, so why is this important? So when it comes to pronunciation, we need to think about, are we using a model? Are we trying to sound like a native speaker? Or are we trying to be intelligible? So a lot of the research or a lot of the methodologies that are out there now are trying to get away from sounding exactly like a native speaker with more of a focus on intelligibility and comprehensibility. So can people understand you correctly, which is a more important goal. And with that, we get new models of English, such as English as a lingua franca, English as an international language, global English, Globish, I've heard. There are a lot of different terms that are in there. So with this, there are two main approaches we see with teaching pronunciation. And I've got these sort of at odds with each other. So we've got native speakers, using native speakers as the model for teaching pronunciation, and then what's called the lingua franca core. So Jennifer Jenkins has taken this and she's written more about this lingua franca core, which are the different features of pronunciation which are needed to be understood by a greater variety of people in the world. So in today's workshop, I am actually going to focus on North American English. It's my native dialect, the one that is natural for me. Also, it is the variety of English that a lot of our learners are familiar with because what they see on Netflix, whatever they see in different television shows and movies, it's also a widely recognized variety. So I won't be focused as much on accuracy, but using this as a model that can help us be understood. So today I'm going to start out with sound and word level pronunciation, and then from there we'll get into some super segmental features. And then there'll be time for questions. We'll see at the end, or just ask questions as we go. Okay, switch here. Okay, so with sound and word level pronunciation, I'm going to break this down into 4 different steps. So first of all, I'm going to provide an overview of articulatory phonetics, because it's an important, these are important concepts that we need to make sure that we understand. Then, I'm sorry, I've got 5, not 4. Then native speaker utterances. So this is a model that I have developed to help teach North American vowel sounds. And a lot of people find this fun, and I think a lot of teachers, hopefully you'll find it fun, and your students will find it fun. And then I'll talk about teaching phonemic transcription, IPA. I'm sure you guys are familiar with transcription. So you either really hate it or you really love it. And then how to instruct learners to do their own preparation of keywords, especially if you are preparing for a presentation or for speaking activity. And then we could talk about assessing both prediction and production. So these together will play a role in our sound level and word level pronunciation. Okay, so let's start out with providing an overview of articulatory phonetics. So these are the articulators, the parts of the mouth that are used. So consonants and vowels have to be taught differently, even though they're both segmentals. The way that they're pronounced is extremely different. And learners need this basic understanding so that when we're trying to provide feedback, we're not just saying, no, that sounds wrong, try it this way. The whole listen, repeat, no, that's wrong, try it again. So by understanding articulatory phonetics, we can give better instructions on how to make changes in the mouth. Also, with consonants and vowels, there are different descriptors that we'll use, or different ways to describe the consonants and the vowels. So with consonants, we'll talk about place of articulation, the manner of articulation, and then voicing, these 3 things. Place of articulation, manner of articulation, and voicing. But then when it comes to vowel sounds, it will be the tongue height, how high it is in the mouth, the tongue frontness, if it's front, central, or back, and then the vowel length, and I put length in quotation marks here, because it's more of an issue of tense versus lax. And we'll talk about this long versus short and tense versus lax, which is an extremely important distinction in English. Some books will also talk about lip rounding. So when you make the ooh sound, ooh, there's this nice rounding, or when you make the e sound, sometimes people say you're smiling when you make the e sound. But some people teach lip rounding, others do not. I'm not going to cover lip rounding today. Okay, so let's start out with place of articulation. I like to call this Mr. Mouth. And so I use this diagram over and over again to show where everything is. So first of all, we get the lips. These are pretty obvious in the front, easy to see, and then also the teeth. But then we start to get further back, and then there's some other terms that our learners may not be as familiar with. So I've got it in English, and then I also have it in Spanish, because some of these are not as well known. So you got what's called the alveolar ridge, which has also been referred to as the tooth ridge in some materials, la cresta alveolar. Behind that, to find the alveolar ridge, if you take your tongue and just kind of, feel right behind your teeth, you get that little bump there, that's the alveolar ridge, or the tooth ridge. So it's the easiest way to find that. Then we get what's called the hard palate, or the óseo, the hard palate. And then further back, we get what's called the soft palate, or the velum. So you hear both of these terms, soft palate or the velum. Then we get the throat, also known as the glottis. Most of us are familiar with the throat down here. Then the vocal cords in Spanish, las cuerdas vocales. And then the tongue we're going to divide into 3 different parts. So we'll have the tip of the tongue, kind of very obvious at the tip. Then right behind it, we have what's called the blade. So right behind, so you've got a knife. On the knife, you've got the blade of the knife. Then we'll talk about the blade of the tongue. And then the back of the tongue. So we'll divide the tongue into these 3 parts to help us describe sounds. And then we get what's called the nasal cavity. So when we make our nasal sounds of and there is vibrations going on in the nasal cavity. So that's the place of articulation, so understanding what parts of the mouth are working. Then we get to the manner of articulation. 2 main categories that I like to cover are stops and continuance. You can get into many more categories, but stops and continuance tends to make this a lot easier. So stops, also known as plosives, are consonants where the airflow stops completely, and then there's a quick release of air. So, and those are ones with a microphone. You get that big puff of air. So those plosives can be good or bad with a microphone. And then continuance. I like the term continuance because it's a continuous airflow. So the air continues to flow. And this will get broken down into fricatives, nasals, liquids, and approximates. So fricatives, I like to think of this as there is audible friction. So these are our fricatives. And then the nasals, when we talked about the nasal cavity, where we make complete closure and we allow it to vibrate in the nasal cavity with And then the liquids, kind of an odd sound here, or an odd word, are the laterals and rhotics. So lateral is the L sound, the la 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 la, and then rhotic is the R sound. So rain, right. Then the approximates would be sounds such as the what sound and the y sound, because they are they're continuants, because I can go ooh, yeah. We do have one other type of sound, which are called affricates, which I put with stops, which is sort of a combination of a stop and a continuant. This would be ch and j, so ch and j, because it starts like a stop consonant, and then becomes a fricative. So ch, ch, j, j. So that's why it's sort of between those two. Then we get into voicing. So we talked about the vocal cords. And we've got voiced and voiceless sounds. And one of the best ways to teach this distinction is everyone take your hand and put it on your throat, and everyone go, zzz. Do you feel anything? You shouldn't feel anything. Now go, zzz. And you should feel it vibrating. So go, zzz, zzz, zzz. So it's the easiest way to teach voicing that I've found. So we take this combination of place of articulation, manner of articulation, and voicing, and then we can put it onto a chart such as this. On the left-hand side, we have the voiceless sounds, and then on the right-hand side, we have the voiced sounds. The other thing I like about this chart is it goes from the front of the mouth with the two lips to the back of the mouth with the throat. So you can actually take the diagram we had of Mr. Mouth and put Mr. Mouth over this consonant chart. And it's basically showing you where the sounds are. This can be extremely helpful as an instructor because if you look at this chart and a student is using a sound that is other than the one that is the target, chances are that sound will be close by on the chart. So we're taught these sounds more by the letters of the alphabet. The order of letters of the alphabet is extremely arbitrary. It has nothing to do with pronunciation. But this is not arbitrary. This basically has to do with what I like to call the geography of the mouth. So if we understand the geography of the mouth, where the sounds are, this can sometimes help us and help our learners understand, all right, it's kind of in a slightly different place than what our target is. So let's do a quick quiz. Let's see, we've got, if you're watching online, you can write it down. We'll see how you guys do here. How would we describe the sound if we were to use these descriptive terms? It's fricative.
Voiceless.
Voiceless. And then what's the place of articulation?
The lips. Tip and the lips.
Yes. So it's going to be a voiceless labiodental fricative. Good. Voiceless labiodental fricative. How about the j sound? J, j, j.
African.
Affricate.
It starts with close and then.
Right. So which makes it an affricate.
I think it's voiced.
Voiced.
And the place of articulation is the. You put the tip of your tongue behind your understanding. I know how to teach it, but I don't remember.
That would be alveolar, but it's actually palatal. So it's voice palatal stop or voice palatal affricate. So depending on which term we use, stop or affricate. And then how about the th sound? A very difficult one. Go ahead. It's voiceless. And what's between the teeth? Interdental, very good. Voiceless, interdental.
And it's fricative.
Yep, voiceless, interdental, fricative. And then the last one, what? The what sound?
Voiced.
Voiced.
Yeah.
It is continuous. It's a continuant. This one's a little difficult, I give it to you. Voiced bilabial approximant. Bilabial, the lips are coming together, but sometimes it's also called velobilabial because the back of the tongue is also going up to the vela. Okay, so why would we describe consonants to learners becomes the next question. So it helps our students think about how they're pronouncing sound. So this raises metacognitive skills. It also helps us compare and contrast difficult consonant sounds. Do you find that there are consonant sounds in English that are difficult for your learners? What are the difficult ones? The j sound. B. And we'll get to all of these.
And
Great.
they would too, because they tend to pronounce it with the throat.
Ah, okay.
Not with that. Like,
Okay.
like the wood, for example, wood.
Wood.
Here.
Here. Oh, the H sound also. Yeah. That's
With
another
the
one.
lips, they pronounce.
Okay, good, good. This can also help with error correction. So when a learner pronounces a sound different than the target, then again, rather than just saying that's wrong and here repeat after me, you can actually help with descriptive terms to help them with that. All right, some different consonant differences. I'm gonna see if I'm gonna try to not use this and use the keyboard because I'm trying to hold too many things at once, see if that helps. So English, ta and da are actually alveolar sounds, which is a little bit different than Spanish because in Spanish they're dental sounds. So the and the in Spanish, the tip of the tongue actually goes on the back of the teeth, making them dental. Whereas in English, most varieties, or most inner circle varieties of English, it's an alveolar sound. So it's ta and da. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. Then the English R tends to be very difficult because in Spanish it's either a tap or the trilled sound, where in English it's this retroflex sound. And so I'll take you through ways that you can teach that. It'll be difficult to do holding the microphone and my hands, but we'll find a way to do it. And then I'll take you through the more palatal sounds so that we'll get to the j sound that you said was difficult for your learners. And then bu versus ba, another one that came up. And then we'll talk about the interdentals of the versus the. Okay, so with alveolar stops, if we go back and look at Mr. Mouth, usually we don't have to do that much teaching in terms of the placement for ta versus da, because whether you use a dental or an alveolar is not going to make as big of a difference. What usually causes the difficulty in understanding is aspiration. So aspiration is going to become the issue that we want to take a look at. So there's a little formula, and if we look at the voiceless stop sounds, which are pa, ta, cha, and ka. Pa, ta, cha, and ka. So that's why I like to put cha, the affricate, in with the stop consonants. If those come before a stressed vowel, they may have this puff of air after it. Now, if there's an S in front of it, it blocks that puff of air. And you can't have an R or an L sound after the stop consonant. So we have words like pray, and you hear that pray, ooh, with the microphone, you hear that puff of air. Closet, closet. So there's that puff of air. Topic, topic. So that first T, topic, is aspirated, but the put and the ka there are not aspirated because there's not a stressed vowel after it. Achieve will have it, the ch sound, but then if we get spark and scraps, because there's an S in front of it, the S blocks that aspiration. So in order to teach this, there's this concept that gets really nerdy, but it gets kind of fun to get nerdy about our pronunciation, which is called voice onset timing, VOT, voice onset timing. I always like to go to Lattifoged, and Lattifoged has so many volume or editions of this book, of course, in phonetics. And voice onset timing is the amount of time it takes for the vocal cords to vibrate for the vowel after the release of a stop consonant. So how much time in milliseconds? This is really, really short. So in milliseconds, how long does it take for your vocal cords to start vibrating for that vowel afterwards? So this chart coming from Lattifoged shows how different languages will use different voice onset timing. So if we compare English, French, and Thai, and French is going to be very similar to Spanish. So French and Spanish are similar, but Lattifoged actually uses French in his book, so I'm using it here. So with English, we've got the initial B, as in ba, ba, And then the voiceless unaspirated stop, as in spa, spa, spa. But then we get this pa, pa, there, ooh, you hear that aspiration. For French, though, it's more ba, 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 ba. So you're not getting this puff of air and this aspiration. Then with Thai, Thai is a language where you actually have ba, ba, and pa. So if you've ever seen in English with the word a Thai restaurant, Thai, and it's T-H-A-I, and people say, well, why is it spelled T-H-A-I? That's because in the Thai language, it's an aspirated T. So that is showing us it's not Thai, it's not Thailand, it's Thailand, and that H is there to represent the aspiration, which sounds natural in English because we would naturally aspirate that T. But for other languages, you kind of need to add that puff of air, that H. So some exercises for teaching aspiration is if you take a piece of paper, and let's see if I'll grab this, like a napkin here. And so I'll just take it now. Of course, now it's in front of, hi! So now it's in front of the microphone, so we'll see if you can actually hear. So I like to put it up here and go, pot, pot, pot. So with that, you can see that the napkin is actually moving. But then if I say spot, 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 once I put the S in front of it, it's not going to move. So if we're trying to teach aspiration with our learners, try taking a piece of paper, a napkin, or a Kleenex, and then practice with these words such as pop, chop, or pot, top, chop, and coop. And then I like to do it with the alternating spot, stop, and scoop, where it blocks it. Because we don't want our students going spot, stop, scoop, where everything gets an aspiration, because then that's going to sound a bit odd. Okay, questions on aspiration before I move on? Okay, now for the next fun one with teaching the retroflex R. How many of you have had trouble with teaching the R sound to students for the English R sound? It's such a difficult sound. Okay, so I'm gonna see if there's a way for me to do this, because usually I need 2 hands to do this. That would be great if you could hold it.
And light.
And so, all right, so what we're going to do to teach the R sound is we can do it either from the N sound or the G sound. I usually like to go from the N sound. So I want everyone to make the N sound right now. N, 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 N. And here's the interesting thing about the N sound. With N, we usually talk about how the front of the tongue is touching the alveolar ridge. So you feel that Here's what we don't talk about. The sides, the back sides of the tongue are also touching the upper back teeth. Feel it. Do you feel your entire tongue is pressed up, and so the back sides of your tongue are touching the sides, the back sides of your teeth, and then the front of the tongue is touching the alveolar ridge. Because we have to make complete closure for a nasal so that the air doesn't come out the mouth, and instead it goes through the nasal cavity and it vibrates there. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the N sound to teach the R sound, because N is usually a sound that our learners can make. So we start with N. We're going to go and so for those of you, she's off the hook because she's holding the microphone. But the rest of you, you got to take your hands like this, do it like this. And then you guys on watching on the screen, and you can do it there behind the camera. Take your hands and pretend that this is your tongue, and everyone go Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to move our tongue back, and as we do this with our tongue, we're going to do it with our hands. We're going to go We're going to pull our tongue back and curl. We're going to go Now, when you make the as you curl and pull back, the front of your tongue curls, and it's not touching the top of your mouth. So it's behind the alveolar ridge, but you feel that the back sides of your tongue are actually touching your back top teeth. So we're gonna go So we do this. Now we're gonna release the sound to make it into an onset, so the beginning of a word, our sound. So we're going ra, ra. And then we can all go ra, ra, re.
Ra, ra, re.
Kick them in the knee. Ra, ra, ras.
Ra, ra, ra.
Kick them in the other knee. Thank you. It's a joke from Emma. So that's one way that we can do it with using, and thank you very much for holding the microphone. So we can go from that end sound. So you use your hands, because the hands really helped. Do you notice that by using your hands, it makes you think about the placement of your tongue? This is a really difficult sound to pronounce. R's in different languages are very difficult. If the N doesn't work, you can also work with the G sound. So go the g, 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 g. So I'll use the g, 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 g. So g, the back of the tongue is towards the velum, and if we go g, 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 and then we curl the front of the tongue, so we can go g, 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 ra, 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 ra. So it's another way of doing it. So as we do this, another thing that I like to point out is that R can be both released, so we're focusing on the released, as in right, wrong, ra, ra, re. And it's also can be used at the end of a vowel sound, so as in here, fear. What will happen is learners will often hear that there is an extra vowel in there. And in fact, if you look at British transcription will treat it as a triphthong, where there are 3 vowels in there. American English just treats it as it's a long vowel with an R sound, and they don't hear this extra sound. So I always have to work with my native English-speaking pronunciation instructors to know non-native speakers will hear an extra vowel. So the word here to a native speaker of English is 1 syllable. But if you listen to it slowed down, here, it sounds like it's 2 syllables. So it's something pedagogically that it's important to just know that distinction. Okay. Some other exercises I like to do with both the R and the L sound is clusters. So once you learn the rough sound, Spanish speakers know the L sound, but then combining L with other sounds, because we've got so many clusters in English. So I've got a nice list of blue, climb, flat, glass, brew, climb, draft, fract, different words to practice with. And then you can use an exercise that's called pre-positioning. So if you're trying to teach the word blue, and if your students are saying baloo, baloo, or a blue, have them work first with just blue, 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 blue. So this is called pre-positioning, where you take any one of these words on this chart. So if you take cry, and you just go rye, 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 cry, 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 cry. So you're just adding that first consonant in front. So we had the j sound, right? The j sound was something that's difficult. So let's talk about palatals. The palatal sounds, there are 4 of them in English. So we've got ch, j, sh, and zh. Ch, j, sh, and zh. And the y sound will actually help us make these palatals. And your learners probably see this, where I will get you, I will miss you, I bet you, could you. And so across word boundaries, You're like, wait, why are you saying that? It's no, I met you. I met you. No one says that. I met you in the United States. No one says I met you. I met you. So if we can use this palatalization that naturally happens in quick speech, we can help our learners make all 4 of these palatal sounds. So I like to use this little grid. So if we start in the top left-hand corner for the ch sound, everyone say to you, to you, to you. And we're going to speed it up. To you, to you, to, chew, 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 chew. Now we got the ch sound. Very quick and simple. We can do this in any class with any level learner. Now let's do it for the j sound. Actually, we'll save that one for last because that's the hard one. So we'll do the sh sound. So let's start with so you, so you, so you, so you, su, 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 shoo, 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 shoo. All we're doing is taking the so we're bringing the s sound back into the palatal region to make it into a sh. Now we'll go counterclockwise. Let's do the j sound. The j sound, which is used a lot here in Uruguay in different ways. So we'll say zuyu, which I know makes no sense, but we'll still use it. So say zuyu, 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 shoo, 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 shoo. And then we'll do that for the j sound, and we'll start with do you, do you, do you, do you, do, chew, 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 chew. Now we get the j sound. So by taking that d sound and palatalizing it with the y sound, we are able to make the j sound. So this is a great exercise I like to use with my learners. It's a very quick thing that you can throw up on the board at any time. And once your learners know it, you can review this so quickly. We got labiodentals. We're trying to get that term, labiodentals. So labial lips and teeth. And so we've got the v and the th sound, v and th. One of the things that we can do is we can go from s to f. And so most of our learners will have f, they'll have the f sound. So if we try to take that th and then we voice it, so we go so we can alternate them between now try with so now we're working on 2 different sounds because the z sound is another one that doesn't exist in Spanish. But it's usually not as difficult for people to make the z sound, but the th might be a little bit more difficult. Another one that I like to do is looking in a mirror. So there were days when we taught pronunciation where we would bring a bag of mirrors, and now, oh look, I've got my cell phone's right here. You just turn on the selfie camera. So if you take that selfie, you just turn on that selfie camera, and you can look in the selfie camera and see that you're doing th, 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 th. You should be able to see your teeth. Th, 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 th. Now, here's what I find happens a lot of times when I'm teaching this, especially to Spanish speakers, is we're trying to do the th sound, and they go buh, 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 buh. So what I do is another exercise where I call lip holding. So try very, 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 very. So if you hold your upper lip, now your upper lip can't come down and touch the lower lip, and it doesn't become a bilabial stop, but it remains a labiodental fricative. So that's one way that we can work. Then the interdentals. This one came out, the th and the th sound. These are very exotic sounds in world languages. So if your learners have trouble with it, it's not that they're bad learners at all. They're just trying to learn an extremely exotic sound. Very, very exotic in world languages. So when I teach this, a lot of times what I like to do is I just start out and say, everyone stick your tongue out. Just go, good, do it. It'll make them laugh, but it's a good place to start. And then I use what I call the finger and thumb test. So take these two fingers, finger and thumb. We're going to put them together, and it's like it's making this little V shape, like this tiny little V type thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to put these on our teeth, and we're going to go think, 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 think. Now the reason why I use the finger and thumb test is you should be able to feel your tongue with both of your fingers. Think, think, think. Because what will happen is a lot of times students will go think, 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 think. So they're clenching down and the tongue doesn't come out. So if you don't think, or this, that, these, those. So if you can't feel your tongue, it's not coming out far enough. Now if we go this, and we've got all this tongue, that's too far. That's too far. And this does happen a lot, where I'll have students go, this, that, please, think. So this is where the finger and thumb test becomes helpful, because if you can just think this, that, these, those, that is exactly how far out that we want it to go. So it's a nice thing that you can do at home. It will embarrass your students in class, it'll make them laugh, or a combination of both, but it's fun. You can also do it with a mirror or the selfie camera so that you're looking to see, can you see your tongue come out between your teeth? We can also work with conversions. We can take the suh sound and we could go s, s, s. And the same with the and we can use the finger and thumb test with it. So what you're seeing that we're doing with a lot of these exercises is we're taking sounds that our learners already know and we're converting them into other sounds. So if we spend time laying the groundwork of, so these are the places of articulation, these are the manners of articulation, this is voicing. So we have that vocabulary there, and we raise that metacognition. Then we work with what are the sounds that we already have in our repertoire that we can already use. Take those sounds and now start to convert them. So for the R, we go from an N sound, ra. For our palatals, we take ta, da, sa, and za, which are easier sounds for us to make, and then we convert them. And then here, we're taking s and z and making them into fa and the. So it's all we're doing here is converting sounds. Any questions about consonant sounds? All right, shall we move on to vowel sounds? Oh, because people are like, consonant sounds aren't so difficult, but teaching vowels. So here's a quick quiz. How many vowel sounds are there in the English language? What? 15? 11? So if we're looking at general American English, the wide variety, most have 17 distinct vowel sounds. So it's 15 stressed vowel sounds and 2 unstressed vowel sounds. So that's what we'll be working with, is these 17 vowel sounds. I always love asking this question because sometimes I'll get there's 5, or I'll get there's 10 because there's long and there's short. I always love to hear like what's the rationale. So I always like to ask the question. See, ask your students that. Seriously, ask your students how many vowels they think there are in English. And it will really help you to kind of figure out where they're coming from. Okay, so those of you with pieces of paper, write down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 very quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just write down. And then you're just going to write A or B. A or B. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Number 1, beat. Number 1, beat. Number 2, bed. Number 2, bed. Number 3, cub. Number 3, cub. Number 4, pen. Number 4, pen. Number 5, boot. Number 5, boot. Number 6, red. Number 6, red. All right, number 1, was it A or B?
A.
It was A, beat. Number 2, was it A or B?
B.
It was B, fed. Number 3, A or B?
A.
It was A, cub. Number 4, A or B?
B.
It was B, pen. Number 5,
A.
it was A, boot. Number 6,
B.
B. I just did A, B, A, B. Okay, good job. Good job. So with this, so my question, first of all, is how easy was it for you to understand these words? To understand the differences? You guys are expert English speakers, so for you guys, this is easy. But now, my next question is, how easy would it be for you to read these for your learners and to make sure that you were making that distinction? Is that going to start to get a little bit harder? Then, how easy would it be for your students to read these words and make a distinction? And then, how easy would it be for your students to understand these words and understand the distinction? So this is where vowels start to get more complex. So with vowel sounds, we're going to talk about the tongue height. Is the tongue high, mid, or low? Tongue frontness, is it front, middle, or back? And then vowel length, again, I put this in quotation marks, length, long or short. And we'll talk about tense and lax. And this one requires a little bit more instruction. And then there's also the lip rounding. In English, back vowels are rounded, like oo and o. And then for E, it's more lip spreading. This generally is not as big of an issue for Spanish speakers. It's more an issue of the tongue height frontness, and then especially the tense versus lax. That's a big issue, and we'll talk about that one. So let's compare Spanish to American English. Spanish has 5 vowel sounds. Whew. It's an easy classic system. And American English, 17 vowels. It's a huge difference. It's like more than 3 to 1. In Spanish, they're all full vowels. They're all full vowels. In American English, you've got both stressed and unstressed vowels, stressed and unstressed, which makes things very difficult. In Spanish, you do not distinguish between lax and tense vowels, but in American English, you do distinguish between tense and lax. It's an extremely important distinction. And then in Spanish, they're all pure vowels, whereas in American English, many are shifting vowels, which means that the tone changes. This is why you can always tell an American who's trying to speak Spanish, ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo? Oh. Where it's not como, oh in Spanish. But in English, it's oh. So there's always this shifting of the tongue in your mouth. So while it seems like O and O are the same between Spanish and English, they're not. Because there's a complete difference between a Spanish speaker saying como and an American saying como está usted, as we learn in Spanish 101. So this is the Spanish vowel system with E, E, A, O, U. 5 simple vowels, classic. British then has the British monophthongs, along with the British diphthongs. And this is what, go back. So this is what makes teaching British English so difficult. That's why I like teaching American English better. Not just because it's my variety, but it is easier to teach. And then this is the North American vowel chart. So we'll have these 17 vowels, and then I put at the top the shifting vowels, which are often known as the diphthongs with I, oi, and ow. And we'll come back to these in just a moment. The 3 shifting vowels, another way that I like to look at this is with the I, we're going from an A to an E sound, I. For the oi, we're going from a long O sound, oi. And for ow, we're going from the ah to the oo sound, ow. I'm going to teach you an even better way to teach American vowels. This is one of my favorite things to teach. But before we do that, let's talk about this vowel length. So the important thing with vowel length is it's not just a matter of how long it is. So we can't just take beat and bit and make it beat, 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 beat. No, it's not that. There's also this distinction between tense and lax. So if we work with the words, so we'll do bead and bid. So bead and bid. So bead has the long E sound, and then bid has the short I sound. Bead and bid. What we're going to do with this is we're going to take your hands. I'll use one. You guys can use both. And so when we make the tense long sound, we're going to squeeze. And I want you to have your hands actually here, because they're actually muscles that are right here in the sides of your neck that are going to squeeze when you do this. So everyone go bead, bead. Now go bid and release it. Bid, bid, bid. Bead, bead, bid. And can you feel it? Feel it in your neck. Bead, bid, bead, bid. So you should be able to feel the tenseness and then the laxness of this muscle. That's what's happening when we're speaking English, is these muscles are constantly squeezing and relaxing, squeezing and relaxing. It's a lot of work going on. It's a lot of work to speak English. So to practice this, if we have our learners take their fists here and we go E, 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 by using our hands with the squeezing and releasing, now we're making this distinction between tense and lax, tense and lax. So squeeze and relax it, squeeze and relax it. Another one I like to do is rowing. So we're going to pull and go E, 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 because it takes a lot of energy just to pull that oar. You know, in Barcarolo, if there was water in the lake, you could get in a rowboat. You can't do that right now. You're not going to go very far. I saw it. I was like, where'd the water go? Okay. So those are two exercises I like to use. So the hand squeezing and then the rowing. Now for my favorite one, native speaker utterances. So after looking at so many published textbooks that were out there, I just wasn't happy with a lot of the models that were out there. Books would use these key words and say, all right, we're going to teach you bead, bid, bade, bed, bat, bot, boat, boot, but. Like, okay, but my learners are already mispronouncing these words. So my learners can't make the distinction between bet and bait. Bet, bait, bet, 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 bet. Really good. At the end, it all sounds the same. So what does that matter? And even if they're different words, if they use the word it for a short I, but my learners are saying eat, 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 eat. All right, now it doesn't work. You're memorizing a word that you're mispronouncing. So I developed this model which I call native speaker utterances. And so I have matched up an utterance that native speakers would make that has at its core a sound that matches up to each of the 15 stressed vowel sounds, because there are 15 stressed vowels and then 2 unstressed. So, do I have it here? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the high front vowel, with the E, and I want you to repeat after me. So everyone go, wee, wee. So we're having fun. Everyone go, wee. Then for short I, something, it doesn't taste good, we're going to ick. Ick. Then I'm trying to get someone's attention for long A, I'm going to say, hey. 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 Then something happens I don't care about, I'm going to go, Then I'm happy about something, I'm going to go, yeah. With this ah. And then you go to the doctor, and the doctor says, open up and say, ah. And the reason reason why the doctor says open up and say ah is it lowers your tongue, because if the doctor said open up and say e, you can't see. So ah. And then if I showed you a picture of my dog, you would all go aw. So the short back O, so we're doing like a U shape here. Aw. Our little baby, cute little baby. Aw. Nice rounded mouth. Moving further back, I'm surprised. I'm gonna go oh. I'm surprised. And then you all see Tarzan. I'm Tarzan, me Tarzan, you Jane. Oh. So this type of sound, gets that as in could or would. And then let's say a friend of mine is getting engaged. She got a ring and there's a big diamond on it. And you go ooh. You look at that. Ooh, that's pretty. Then we're gonna go back to the middle, and with the mid vowel, when I don't know what to say, I go it's kind of like and then a tiger or bear would go grr, 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 grr. Or frosted flakes, I think they're called frosties here, or tucaritas, and every country calls them something different. That they're great, grr, tell you the tiger with that grr. Then with our shifting vowels, I'm going to say hello, so I'll go hi, hi. And then pirate is on a ship. It says, I see land, ahoy, ahoy, for that oi sound. And then if you drop something on my foot, I will probably say, ouch, 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 for that ow sound. So this is what we're doing, is instead of teaching, remember the word it, remember the word that, we're teaching these. So let's just go through these one at a time, very quickly. We, ick, hey, yeah, ah, aw, oh, ooh, grr, hi, ahoy, ouch. Then what I do is I go back through and do just the sounds themselves. E, I, ah, aw, oh, ooh, I, boy, ow. And if at any time my learners have trouble with it, we go back and say, let's try ouch. Let's try aw, look at the cute little puppy. Let's try grr, grr, isn't that great? So by using these native speaker utterances, we've got a model that we can go back to. So the reason for using these is that it matches up rather with a word that our students are going to mispronounce. It's matching up with an utterance that native speakers tend to use that has some type of communicative value. And so also our learners are learning to make some of the same sounds that native speakers are using. And I just think they're fun. I think it's a lot more fun using these. Okay, so when you guys get the slides, you'll see this is all the material is kind of with more description. I've also put exclamation points in here. So the exclamation points are the tense vowels. And if it doesn't have an exclamation point, it is a lax vowel. So it helps reinforce some of these different metacognitive strategies and descriptive strategies we're trying to work on. And I think I covered this one. So I like to use these to introduce vowel sounds. I use them to review vowel sounds. So I'll have a chart that I just go through. Like once a week, I make sure let's go through our native speaker utterances, or my students will have a handout so we can go through them at least once a week. I'll use it as part of error correction. So when they get a vowel sound wrong and it sounds like another word, I go back to the native speaker utterances and say, well, this is the sound. And then we go back and we're able to do that. And then also use it for contrasting two or more vowel sounds. We can also use it for contrasting our target vowel sound with other neighboring vowel sounds. And then, as I did with you guys, once we go through the native speaker utterances, then I like to connect it back to the sounds without the native speaker utterance. So instead of doing just ouch, we do ouch to ow, ow. And then I will use these in conjunction with articulatory features. So what's the tongue placement and lip shape, so any of that descriptive language that we're using. Okay, now let's move on to transcription. How many of you love transcription? How many of you hate transcription? No one wants to admit to hating it. I'm sure there's someone watching who's like, I hate transcription. That's okay. Not everyone loves it. So I like teaching transcription because as we try to prepare learners, and I know a lot of us are preparing learners for academic purposes, for business purposes, and they're going to be learning words that are brand new that maybe you don't even know. Because my learners would come to me with words I've never seen before. So my learners need to know how to use a dictionary, because I'm not their dictionary, and I can't come up with the pronunciation of every word. Our learners also need to know that there are many different kinds of transcription systems. How many of you found that a student comes to you with a dictionary and there's a transcription system in it and you're like, I've never seen this before. It's so different. There's so many different ones. And I've had students complain about my class because I use a transcription system that's different than the one that they learned, or that's different than this book or this dictionary. There's no consistency. But we still need to learn how to transcribe so that we can be describing sounds. And also, this will help us with prediction skills. So this is why I like using transcription. So there's traditional IPA. I like to use what's called modified IPA, which I'll show you. There are pedagogical symbols, which I'll show you. There's another system called Alphabet. It's very strange that I'll show you, and please never use it. Sorry if you are watching this and you created it. There's American, there's British, there's Australian, there's all kinds of different styles. So here's the ARPANET. So I'm finding this on some different apps that are out there, some new apps. So like AO is aw, AA is ah, and so it doesn't quite make sense to me. If there's a 1, it's a stressed vowel. I think if there's a 0, it's unstressed. Yeah, I'm trained in this and I can't make sense of it. So let's skip. These are the pedagogical symbols that sometimes you'll find where the long vowels have the macron. The macron is that line that's over it. That's the technical word for it, macron. And then they'll use this little hat for the short back O and the short back U. I've used this. I like this when I'm working with younger learners. So you're teaching classes to children, and they're working on just the difference between long and short. That long with the long line is kind of an easy way for them to learn this. So I've used that before. However, this doesn't prepare them to use dictionaries. So there are pros and cons to it. Then we get the modified IPA versus traditional IPA. So on the right-hand side, we've got the traditional IPA. On the left-hand side, we've got modified IPA. Most of your dictionaries are going to have what's on the right-hand side, which is the more traditional IPA, which is this more British style. I like the modified IPA because all long vowels have 2 letters used to represent it, and it ends in a Y or a W. So it just makes it very easy in going through and doing the transcription. But pick a style that you're going to use. If you happen to use my materials, you're going to be using modified IPA. And most of the textbooks I find that are published in the United States for pronunciation use modified IPA. I've looked at about 30 different textbooks in the USA, and it's pretty consistent. But if you go to the British books, you're going to get the traditional. So as I said, it's easier to teach the modified IPA. I think I just talked about that. So reasons to teach transcription, especially with English, is there is no spelling to pronunciation correlation, really, that's consistent. And the reason for that is the English language is, the history of it is it came from Germanic, this Anglo-Saxon language, And then all these French speakers came into England, and then there were all these French words that were brought in. And along with that, you had these Latin words that were brought in. So you have these words that have the old Anglo-Saxon, like bought, B-O-U-G-H-T. That's Anglo-Saxon. But then you get considerate. So considerate is going to be more of your French and Latin background. So you can actually tell by the way a word is spelled, oftentimes, what language it's coming from. So because we've got this combination of these Germanic Anglo-Saxon words, and then the words that were imported from French, and then also along with Latin, and then we also got many Greek words, like psychology, which gives you that PSY, oh wait, PSY? Where did that come from? It came from Greek. So that's why our spelling is so different. So transcription can help us with teaching this. So what I like to do is, I'll start with very basic words. So let's do numbers, let's do colors, let's do days of the week. Try transcribing Wednesday. Ooh, Wednesday and Thursday, Friday. All the days of the week are pretty difficult. Once a year. Then I like doing more challenging words like the 50 states or names of countries. And I'll set my students to the board and say, transcribe Azerbaijan. And my students can, they learn how to do that. Then if we're doing English for specific purposes, take what are the different types of words that our learners need to know. So if you've got a lesson, you've got a book, you've got that vocabulary that's there, or you've got an article that you're reading or you're discussing, you pull out those words, and then you can do transcription of that. The reason why I like doing transcription is it gives me sort of a physical record that's there on the page. So what I like to do is when I've taught transcription, if I have an assignment where students have to do a presentation, how many of you have taught a class where students have to do a presentation in front of the class? Okay, pretty common. Have your learners make a list of 5 to 10 words that they need to use in their presentation that they know will be difficult words for them to pronounce. And I say, go home, and I want you to transcribe those 10 words. And so here's the transcription symbols we're using. Now transcribe them. And you're going to hand me a copy of your transcriptions before you do your presentation. Now, while you do your presentation, I look at your transcriptions, and I will mark next to your transcription how you pronounce the word. So now what I learn is, where is the difficulty for you as a learner? Some learners have transcribed the word correctly. This means their prediction is correct, but their production is what needs work. For other learners, they've transcribed the word wrong. So their prediction, they're predicting the wrong consonant and vowel sounds. So if I'm trying to correct their production, but it's a prediction issue, I don't know that until I make them do the work to transcribe it ahead of time. This is a great thing to do. You can do this, well, any intermediate to above level you can do this with. I'll come to what we can do to differentiate for lower levels. Other things you can do is, so I'll talk about differentiating in a bit. You can have students transcribe it and then record it for you. There were the old days where you would send students home with audio cassette tape, so they would give you USB key drives. Now you just say, send me a WhatsApp and you can record it. Love it, so easy, it's new technology. You can also do it for a testing situation where you have the students transcribe words and then they record their transcriptions in class. So I'll show you what I'll do is I'll send my students home with, here are 12 US states, and you need to be prepared in class to transcribe 8 of these 12, and then you will have to pronounce them. So in class, without dictionaries, so without any of their mobile phones, they've got to do the transcriptions, and then each of them come up, and then they read those 8 states that they chose from this list of 12, And so I can grade them on both their prediction with the transcription and then their production on how they pronounced it. There's Azerbaijan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Malaysia, North Korea. So what I like about this is that students get to choose between a set of related words. So if there's a word where they're just like, I just don't like this word, I don't want to do it. Also, because I'm testing my learners, it forces them to actually practice at home. And because what I might do is give them a bigger list of, say, 20 states, and from these 20 states, I'm going to give you 12 states, and then you'll choose 8 of those. And then they're practicing more with the transcription and with production. Then I already talked about this, of having your students transcribe ahead of time. Be careful, students sometimes will just copy from a dictionary or from an app. So this is why I'm very specific about, all right, this is the system that we're using, and you have to use this particular transcription system. And this is why I like using modified IPA, because you won't find modified IPA in a dictionary. And it's more pedagogical. So I kind of like that. It makes it harder to cheat. Then other ways that we can incorporate segmentals into the classroom, try reviewing vowels as often as possible. So I like once a week. Once a week is a great way to review them. I like including transcriptions with new vocabulary. So if you do that work ahead of time, you can go online and find ways to get those IPA symbols and put them in new PowerPoints. My teachers that I'm teaching, they find that right away, and then they put that into their PowerPoints. And then during oral production activities, you can make a list of segmentals for later review. So when people are doing group work, rather than stopping people and correcting them, what I like to do is I just make a list, or what I do is I go to the board and I write on the board, like, here are the different sounds. So now let me write this sound, and let me write this word. And so I'm not interrupting it, people kind of see it on the board, and then we come back, and then we're able to review it. Then for lower level students, we can provide them with transcriptions. If we want them to be learning how to transcribe, we can do fill in the blank. So just fill in the blank and how do you transcribe this vowel sound here instead of the whole word? Or have them circle between 2 different transcriptions, or circle which is the vowel sound that we want to use here. So there's a lot of things that we can do to be differentiated. Questions about segmentals? I have so many more slides. We've already got a little more than an hour, so we'll see, and whenever you get tired, we'll just say stop. Okay, so let's talk about super segmentals. The traditional way of teaching pronunciation has often focused just on consonants and vowels, because consonants and vowels are typically easier to teach. Super segmentals, though, especially when you're speaking with people in the inner circle, so with native speakers of English, super segmentals will play a much bigger role in intelligibility. So I always like to focus on this with rhythm, stress, and intonation. So reasons for this is Spanish is a syllable-timed language. So what this means is that when we speak in Spanish, you kind of get the same amount of stress on each of every syllable, so it kind of sounds like this. Y por eso, cuando el americano está hablando en español, it has like this sing-songing of, what are you doing? That's not how it is. You gotta pronounce everything. And so I like to spend time focusing on teaching rhythm because this is often an issue. So what I'm going to look at here is ways for teaching rhythm, and we'll see how far we get. So what I like to do is first teach stress at the word level, and with this I only teach 2 levels of stress, so I don't like to teach secondary stress. And I'll explain why I don't like to teach secondary stress. And then I'll talk about the lettered and numbered patterns of rhythm. It'll make sense in just a bit. And then using what I call physicalizations for teaching rhythm. And then some strategies with both bottom-up and top-down strategies. So the traditional way of teaching word stress is we teach major stress and then minor stress and then unstressed. How many of you have seen this? Here's the major stress, here's the minor stress. So we teach, the two different, stress marks go this direction like that. I say no, don't teach minor stress anymore. So I teach strong syllables and weak syllables. Strong and weak. Why? So there's this great book on English word stress by Eric Fudge, Fudge is his last name, where he says the physical properties which signal stress in English do not enable hearers, even trained phoneticians, to distinguish consistently more than 3 degrees of stress. So, if we can only hear 3 degrees of stress, even if we're a trained phonetician, we really only need 3 levels of stress. If we teach primary, secondary, and unstressed, then we've got 3 levels of stress at the word level. But we still need another level of stress at the phrase level. So secondary stresses, once we get into a phrase, become indistinguishable from secondary or from unstressed syllables. So we can spend all the time we want to and teach secondary stresses until we're blue in the face, but once we put into a sentence, we've wasted our time because we can't hear it. So I don't like teaching secondary stress, and that's why. So with this then, I like to talk about this numbered and lettered styles of rhythm. And most textbooks don't look at this that much. There are a few books that have some nice kind of visual models. I like Linda Grant's book, where she's got this, she's looking at this all cars model, which would be the Spanish, where everything is the same level. And then she's got this cars with motorcycles and buses, which the motorcycles are the unstressed syllables and the buses are the phrase stress. So it's a nice visual. But if we take a look and if we listen to American English and any inner circle variety of English, it's really a combination of the syllable timed and stress timed. And I'll show you why. And then I'll use physicalizations to help you teach your learners this. And then we'll come back to the methodology. So here's where we're going to start. We're going to start with word level stress. So the first thing I like to do with learners is work on, let's do word stress. So which syllable is stressed? I'm sorry, first of all, counting syllables. Sorry, let's count syllables. Yes? Oh yes. So if we go to number three, how many syllables are there? What? Dracula. Three syllables. Number 4. 4. There's 4. How about number 5? It's 5. And how about number 6? 2. But look at how many vowel letters there are there. Imagine this will be difficult for learners. So we're counting the number of syllables there are. After that, we're going to mark strong syllables. So let's teach only primary stress. So we mark that stressed syllable. Now, this is how I like to teach, focusing on word stress. So stresses in English are louder, longer, and on a higher pitch. Louder, longer, and on a higher pitch. So in order to do this, I teach 3 different physicalizations. The first one we do, I call the air pointer. Everyone take your pen or pencil and hold it in the air like this. And every time we do the stress syllable, we're going to push the pen out. So everyone go, rejuvenation. 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 Good. That's going to help us make the stress syllable louder. Because you notice when you do rejuvenation, when you push it, as you notice whenever I push something out, more air comes out and it makes it louder. Then to make it longer, I'm going to pretend I'm holding a rubber band and I'm going to go rejuvenation, rejuvenation, rejuvenation. So that helps us make the stressed syllable longer. Then, to get it higher, we're going to take our hand and go rejuvenation. 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 So I do a combination of all three of these. Rejuvenation, rejuvenation, rejuvenation. And this is great to do in classrooms because how many of you have those students who you give them something and you say, okay, rejuvenation. It's like you can't hear them at all. So when you do these physicalizations, you can see if they are putting it on the correct syllable. Because if they go, rejuvenation, rejuvenation, rejuvenation. So you can visually see where everyone is. So if you do choral repetition, this works great with choral repetition. And as much as they say, you know, communicative language teaching, we don't do choral repetition. Pronunciation, we do choral repetition. It's something we do. It's very helpful. Okay. When it comes to word stress, I'm sorry, there's no reliable system for teaching word stress. There really isn't. And part of that comes to, we've just got too many languages that are coming in and that are influencing. There's a book by Hannah Dickerson called Speechcraft that has many stress rules. It's not a very easy book to teach. So if we skip ahead now to this lettered and numbered styles that I was talking about. So when it comes to rhythm, if we take a look at Spanish, it sounds like we're saying A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. ¿Dónde está la casa de tu madre? ¿Dónde está la casa de tu madre? It's not, ¿Dónde está la casa de tu madre? Like we wouldn't do this like lilting. But then with English, it's more like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Stresses are the way to figure the rhythm of a phrase. 1, 2, and 3 and 4 and 5. Stresses are the way to figure the rhythm of a phrase. So I like to think of these two different styles of A, B, C, D, and 1 and 2 and 3, and using these as a basis. So with this, in inner circle English, strong syllables tend to occur at regular rhythmic beats. We often find this in books. And then weak syllables tend to get squeezed together in the offbeats. We see this in a lot of books. And that strong syllables should be longer, louder, and on a higher pitch than weak syllables. So we see this in many different books. So if we take a phrase like this, stresses are the way to figure the rhythm of a phrase, we see it's louder, longer, on a higher pitch. So I've kind of got this visualized here. And what I like to do is work again with physicalization. So everyone take your ear pointer down and everyone go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Stresses are the way to figure the rhythm of a phrase. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Stresses are the way to figure the rhythm of a phrase. Now you can also do it with dot drawing. So you take a piece of paper and you just go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Stresses are the way to figure the rhythm of a phrase. We can also do it with our hand raising for it to be on a higher pitch. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Stresses are the way to figure the rhythm of a phrase. Or with the rubber band. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Stresses are the way to figure the rhythm of a phrase. Or wheel spinning. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Stresses are the way to figure the rhythm of a phrase. So we've got a lot of different physicalizations that we can use in class with our learners. But what happens in English when we get something like, Mark bought that big old blue couch? Or, Pat's not sure why she has to go to the store with that dumb dog. What our rules tell us is that this will be, Mark bought that big old blue couch. Or, Mark bought that big old couch. Or, Pat's not sure why she has to go to the store with that dumb dog. Does that sound natural? No. So in English, we're actually going to have sentences where you get 2 stressed syllables or 3 stressed syllables in a row. And it's actually quite common. So I like to use what I call these build-ups. So everyone do this with me. Fred likes walking.
Fred likes walking.
Take your air pointer, because I like to use the air pointer because it's a way that we can actually see that our learners are getting this. Fred likes walking.
Fred likes walking.
And I like this because on this, my students will go, Fred likes walking. I'm like, Fred likes walking.
Fred likes walking.
There we go. Number 2, Fred likes walking in the park.
Fred likes walking in the park.
Good. Number 3, Fred and his dog like walking in the park.
Fred and his dog like walking in the park.
Let's try that one again. Fred and his dog like walking in the park.
Fred and his dog like walking in the park.
See how difficult that got there? Fred and his dog like walking in the park.
Fred and his dog like walking in the park.
Much better. Good. Number 4, Fred and his big dog like walking in the park.
Fred and his big dog like walking in the park.
Oh, you guys had to slow down there. Fred and his big dog like walking in the park.
Fred and his big dog like walking in the park.
Oh, now you get your money's worth. Number 5, Fred and his big brown dog like walking in the park.
Fred and his big brown dog like walking in the park.
That was good. Number 6, Fred and his big brown dog like walking in the park in the morning.
Fred and his big brown dog like walking in the park in the morning.
Very good. So see what we've done with this build-up is instead of just starting out with, if we just do Fred and his big, Fred and his big brown, Fred and his big brown dog, we slowly work by adding more words in, and we start to show our learners how much the rhythm of English can change around. And by using the pen, we can really see how our learners are doing. So things that we need to watch for is a lot of our textbooks end up forcing all sentences into one pattern. So you'll see cats chase mice, the cats have chased mice, the cats will chase the mice. And this is just not how English works. So we need to be careful of this because a lot of our textbooks will do this. The other thing that we want to work on is taking longer sentences and breaking them down into smaller message units. So I'll take something like last night, my big brother and I went to see that new movie with aliens and break it down into what are called message units. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip along, but you see with the 2 lines, it's showing these message units. And then I like practicing with Aesop's fables. This is just a fun one that I use because it's in the public domain, and so no one can sue me because they're dead. With that, then my students want to know, so what words are stressed? And there aren't hard and fast rules, but there are tendencies. And the words that tend to be stressed are content words, which are the nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. Nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. I like to say these are the words that we will continue learning for the rest of our life as we learn English. I'm still learning new content words in English. Then we get these strong function words, which are question words, negatives, demonstratives, reflexive pronouns, and possessive pronouns. So there's some of these that also tend to be stressed in rhythm, and then pretty much everything else tends to be weak. And I could probably spend a whole hour on teaching you this, so I will skip through this to get to things that I think will be more practical. Of gestures. So we'll do this. This is getting really close to the end now. Or not. We'll end it with this. Okay. So what I like to do with gestures, actually I do have sound. That's okay. We don't need to actually see the sound or hear the sound. Is when speakers speak the language, there often are gestures that go along with it. You notice when I kind of get excited talking, I end up moving. And so these gestures will mark where stresses are. So I like using TED Talks. Let's see if I can, oh, okay, it's gonna start. And actually, we'll do it like this.
It began with one question. If Africa was a bar, what would your country be drinking or doing? I kicked it off with a guess about South Africa, which wasn't exactly according to the rules.
Watch your hands.
South Africa is not my country, but alluding to the country's continual attempts to build a post-racial society after being ravaged by decades by apartheid, I tweeted, if Africa was a bar, South Africa would be drinking all kinds of alcohol.
Okay, so what you see there, and she's not a native speaker of English, so I chose a world speaker of English. And here we have a very strong proficient speaker of English, and she's using gestures. Gestures are showing where stresses go when someone's speaking. So what I like to do is, when I'm working with my learners, is we use the air pointer, because the air pointer is something that's easy for us to see. We can practice this together. And then after we do this, all you do is you put the pen down, and now you continue talking, but with using gestures. And by using gestures, now we can focus on our speaking skills. So this is where integrating speaking practice with pronunciation practice becomes important. Because we always say, how do I do pronunciation on top of everything else? We can always integrate it together. So with this then, I'll work on different free speech where I will give students impromptu topics. So just take some topics here that I threw together and give students some time, and then say, all right, I want you to speak with a partner, and I want you to make sure that you're using gestures and pay attention to each other and see the gestures that you're using. Or you can have them come up in front of a class and give the presentation. A lot of students, they've got their phones with them. Have someone in the class video them on their phone so that they can take it home and they can watch themselves. And they can see how they're doing. You can ask learners to take themselves at home with their iPhones or with their mobile phones and to see what they're doing in terms of gestures. Okay. And so with this, we can be combining our word level and phrase level. So again, we can go back to what are the words that we want our students to focus on and practice with transcribing them, and then are they getting the word stress along with the consonants and vowels, and then are they placing those correctly in? Okay. I have more, but I've got more than 90 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and stop there, and then the rest will just be in the PowerPoint that I can get for you guys. And so let me just find, it's going to be this final slide here. I'm sure you can all track me down, but for those of you who are watching, my email address is my name, DJ Kaiser, K-A-I-S-E-R, @webster.edu. And if you send me an email with your name, one brand new thing that you learned about English pronunciation, because I always like to know, what is it that you took away from this? And then one thing you learned about English pronunciation that corrected what you originally thought. So I always want to know, what had people been taught about teaching pronunciation, or that they knew about pronunciation that now they're like, oh, maybe what I learned wasn't as correct. And then anything that was left unclear. And I'll be happy to send those for you. Are there any questions that you guys have? All right, sounds good. Well, thank you very much for coming, and tuning in online. And thank you again. I always love coming to the Alianza. I always feel like I'm at home when I come here. It's just such a great facility. So thank you all. Thanks for setting this up.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for enlightening our practice.
It's my pleasure.
Very useful.
Thank you.